Thanks for speaking with Wired.co.uk.
Thank you.
Before you came onto Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, you were working on a Twilight Zone movie, correct?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
So what attracted you away from the Twilight Zone to do Apes?
Well, we were struggling with the story, and it hadn't quite yet reached a place that I thought really lived up to what the Twilight Zone was. And it just so happened that at a moment where we were grappling with that story, this project came and found me, and I was incredibly excited because it's something that I was obsessed with Planet of the Apes as a kid. It's like a lifelong obsession. So, and I loved what Rupert Wyatt did with Rise. I thought it was a brilliant film. So when they approached me, I was like, oh, well, this is very interesting. And then when I came in, they actually had a very different version of the story than what we ended up doing. And I said, oh, maybe this is not the movie I'm going to do. And they said, well, why? Wait, what would you do? And I said, well, they had started in the post-apocalyptic world in San Francisco, and it was really not weighted as much toward the apes, and it wasn't really Caesar's story. And I said, well, I would make it Caesar's story the way that you did with Rise, and I would start not in the post-apocalyptic world, which I think feels a little familiar, but in the ape world creation that I don't think we ever have quite seen, because that would be a way to do a Planet of the Apes movie that is in a space that we've never quite explored before, and it would be an exciting thing to do. And to my shock, they said yes.
Did you have any concerns coming in to such a long-established franchise and how you'd put your own mark on it?
I didn't really have fears about that because I just felt like I thought that Andy Serkis was so amazing in Rise, and I thought that this opportunity to explore this particular idea, which was the one moment in time that could have become Planet of the Humans and the Apes instead of Planet of the Apes, I thought that that was a really exciting sort of story place for the movie. And so in that sense, if we'd been remaking Planet of the Apes or something, that would have made me incredibly nervous. I would have been really worried about that. But what I felt was that we were re-entering the same universe that I remember from my childhood, but from a different perspective, from this emotional perspective of Caesar with the kind of trajectory of that original series at the end of the road. And so that was a very different thing. So in that sense, I was not really nervous about it. I was excited. I was most nervous about doing performance capture for the first time and wondering whether or not that the technical challenges of that might somehow impede my filmmaking, because I'd never done it before. But it turned out that that was not the case. It was really exciting.
Like you said, you've done some fairly effects-heavy films in the past, things like Cloverfield and Let Me In, but not to the performance capture level.
I'd never done motion capture, and that part of it, what I was worried about was that, to me, one of the most important things that a director can do, the thing that I like doing the most, is working with the actors to kind of find the scene. And I worried that motion capture would somehow be an obstacle to that. But I quickly learned that it really is just a device for capturing data. And they wear these cameras and they're wearing dots all over their bodies. And once you just sort of get over the weirdness of that idea, you're actually dealing with, let's say, Andy Serkis or Toby Kebbell or any of our ape performers exactly the way you would any other performer. And that's really what it is. So I actually got incredibly relieved and excited right at the beginning that it was not going to be an impediment to that. It was exciting.
Did it change the experience on set for you as a director, having that level of technology?
That part was the same. The part that was really hard was everything you did after you first staged the scene. Because if I'm shooting you and you're in the set, I need then to shoot that same shot without you in it so that Weta can then take that information that we just got as reference and put it into the shot. So I'm doing multiple shots without you in it, or I'm having the human characters react to you without you being there. And a lot of that can be really challenging because of the emotionality of some of the scenes. And like Jason Clarke, for example, when he's being thrown down by the apes and they're all looking at him and he's got that crazed look on his face, he's actually looking at nothing. And we've done, like, by that time, literally probably 100 takes that day. And he did have 8 performers around him at one point, but by the end, he's got no one around him. And that's what's in the movie. Those things were harder. That was a real challenge.
And Andy Serkis wasn't just performing as Caesar, was he? He was very involved in the actual kind of technology and the filming behind it, right?
I think that's part of the misunderstanding of performance capture. I thought, oh, Andy must have some special technical thing he does. He actually doesn't. What it is he's wearing a piece of equipment that's capturing what he's doing, and Andy is completely, everything that Andy did on the movie had to do with his performance as Caesar. Basically, he's an actor in the film playing that character. What was really helpful to me was that he had such knowledge of the technology that he could say to me, if it would be easier when we're shooting the scene, I could move the camera to this side and you could see my face better and this kind of stuff. And that kind of stuff was amazing because it was the first time that I'd done it. But all of the concern with Andy was about realizing Caesar. It was about a performance. And so people have often said, oh, well, is what he does Caesar, or is Caesar this other thing that's also, what Weta does? And in terms of the performance part of it, it's all driven by what Andy does. He's just an amazing actor. And that, to me, was the revelation of the movie. Like, when I first started, I thought, well, why was I so affected by Caesar in the first film? And when I looked at the footage, and then when I worked with Andy in this film, what I realized is that Andy is just a brilliant actor. He's one of the best actors I've ever worked with.
Did you find it daunting, perhaps, to bring audiences a film where they know there can't be a happy ending? Like you say, it's not Planet of the Apes and the Humans.
Sure.
They know it's effectively hopeless.
That was the most exciting thing to me. I had a film teacher at USC in the United States where I went to school, and he talked about story, and he talked about the kind of stories where where you don't know the ending and how that story becomes a journey of finding out what happened. And he said, but there are also these stories where your point of attack comes in where you know the ending of the story. And when that happens, it changes the whole focus of what that story is about, because it no longer becomes about the narrative of what happened. It starts becoming about the narrative of, well, how do we get there? And why does that happen? And that's all about character. And so for me, it's actually not daunting, it's thrilling to know the ending, because then you know that the story becomes all about those little decisions that the characters make and all of the struggles that they're in, and you end up doing what is essentially a spectacle summer tentpole movie that's actually a character drama. And that's really exciting. It's actually the most exciting part.
It's already been announced that you're attached to a third film in this Caesar cycle.
Yeah.
So where do you see it going next?
Well, the thing that will happen is that Caesar is now entering into the period of time that he was hoping he could avoid, which is the escalation of war, because the idea here was to explore that one moment where it could have gone another way, where peace was possible. And once that passes, then he's going to be thrust into a conflict that really is going to be difficult for him, because he sort of, talking to Andy about it, the way he played Caesar in Rise was that he felt that he was human, and it was a revelation to find out that he was an ape, that he was different, because he was raised by Franco. And so he suddenly discovered that he was an outsider, and then he felt like he was an outsider with the apes. And so in this story, given that he feels as much human as he does ape, the idea that he is going to now have to engage in this conflict is going to be a wrenching experience. And to me, the exploration of this story, this kind of epic journey, is of this mythic sort of journey of Caesar as the seminal figure in ape history. He's almost like their Moses. And so this will be how he leads them through this next period, and how he engages in that aspect of the story, and how we take one step further toward the world of that 1968 film.
And will you still be developing Cloverfield 2 in the interim, or is that...
well, while I'm doing this, I won't really be doing that. But, we've talked about it. We've talked about it a lot. I think it'd be really fun to do that someday. But... at the moment, there's nothing really happening on it.
Okay.